Well, obviously, no ceasefire is designed to fail. But I think the reason that I think hostilities started was because of different interpretations, specifically of point 5 of the MoU with regard to the administration of the Strait of Hormuz. Point 5, as you would recall, stated that Iran would make arrangements for the safe passage of commercial vessels and that it would also be responsible for demining of the strait. Iran interpreted this to mean that all traffic would be coordinated with Iran, with the authority that they have created, and that information on all vessels going through the strait would be there. It was stipulated that this would be toll-free. The United States interpreted, in my view, interpreted this point to mean solely that Iran would not attack the vessels. The safe passage, it make arrangements for safe passage, they interpret it as only a responsibility on Iran to not attack vessels and to demine the strait. So the United States, as a result of this interpretation, began to send ships via the Oman route, the southern Oman route, without informing the Iranians. Iran attacked those vessels, and the U.S. then retaliated, and from there the escalation started with larger attacks by the U.S., larger retaliation by Iran, and that's where we are, I think, at the moment. Yes, exactly. As I mentioned, the Iranian interpretation was that they were responsible for making arrangements for the safe passage, and therefore they ought to be informed of any tanker or any vessels that are traversing the Hormuz Strait, that they should be informed, there should be coordination, and they had set up an elaborate system of such coordination, the vessel, particulars of the vessel, the cargo, etc., etc. Obviously there was a stipulation there would be no charge. It's not the charge or the toll that was the problem. It was the lack of coordination, that lack of information to the Iranians, which was the reason that they attacked the vessels going the southern route. Well, obviously, it was obvious that there's some people in Iran which were unhappy with the MoU. As there were people in the United States who were unhappy with the MoU, the supreme leader's authority to the negotiators to sign the deal also had a condition that although he did not agree in principle with the negotiations, on the recommendation of the president and of the Security Council, he had allowed them to sign the deal. So obviously there was always element or strong elements in Iran which were opposed to the MoU. But the fact that the United States interpreted point 5 in a way that questioned Iran's administrative control of the Hormuz Strait as they saw it flowing from point 5, that gave the hardliners the basis on which to attack the tankers, the vessels that were going on the southern route. So it's obvious that the hardliners had their way, but also the provocation was provided by the U.S. I don't think that the interpretation that a southern route could be used without coordinating with the Iranians is the right interpretation. When you give them the authority, which is in point 5, is to make arrangements for the safe passage, which means you have to at least inform them of that. So the excuse was provided by this action of the US, and the hardliners in Iran obviously pointed to the fact that they were right. US would not observe the provisions of any agreement that they signed. This is their position. This is their belief, and they were provided with the excuse to breach the ceasefire. Well, Washington obviously will negotiate with whoever the Iranian government nominates to be the negotiating team. The Iranian authorities nominated Ghalibaf and Arakchai to be the negotiating team. The team had representatives from all sections of Iran, including the IRGC. So obviously, negotiations will take place with whoever the Iranian government nominates to negotiate. What is the internal dynamics of that negotiating team, or between the negotiating team and the authorities in Tehran? One can't tell. And obviously, the interlocutors are not supposed to be able to try and cherry pick which negotiators they will talk to. They will talk to whoever is nominated to negotiate. So, well, I think there are a combination of several factors, including those that you have mentioned. But I think underlying all of this, in my view, are two fundamental factors. First, they do not trust the United States. And I think the record of negotiations and war following negotiations that has happened gives weight to that perception that the United States is not a trustworthy interlocutor, that whatever they sign, they will go back on. And they have seen this repeatedly. So that's one important factor. The second is the regime feels, or the hardliners in the regime feel, that the best chance of survival is not through the cooperative vision that some in the negotiating team entertained about the United States developing a cooperative relationship with Iran post the war, a reconstruction fund of $300 billion, etc. They believe that survival of the government, of the regime, if you will, lies in the fact of a defiant stance against the United States and its allies. And that is the kind of fundamental ideological, if you wish, perception of the hardliners, that survival is through defiance, not through cooperation with the United States and its allies. I think these are two fundamental factors. And of course, added to that is the emotional outflow from the assassination of the supreme leader and his family, etc. All of those are contributing factors. But I think these are the two fundamental reasons why Iran has taken the stance that they have. Well, of course, it's difficult to fathom the kind of emotional position of Mujtaba Khamenei. One can only imagine that after your father has been killed, your wife has been killed, your daughter has been killed, what sort of emotions that evokes in any human being. So that cannot be discounted, the emotions that are entertained. But combined with that, the fact that the hardliners have this ideological position and the lack of trust in the US, one can understand the kind of rhetoric that emanated in the context of the funeral of Ali Khamenei. So one can only conjecture that. But obviously, there are people in the Iranian establishment, including the president and others in the negotiating team, who also see that the situation of the people is so dire because of the history of sanctions, all the attacks, the destruction that has taken place, that they feel that even though Iran has survived these attacks and that it could survive more attacks, but the future looks bleak if Iran continues to be isolated under sanctions, without the access to banking, access to its resources, access to a free trade of its oil. The future looks bleak for Iran, quite irrespective of the destruction that has happened. If the Iranian people's needs are going to be met, it has to be through normalization of the situation, the economic situation of Iran, and its ability to be able to be a part of the international economic system. So this is a different vision, and obviously these visions are clashing in Iran. As there are differences of opinion in every country, but in Iran, obviously there are different perspectives as to what is best for Iran and its people. Well, I think that the American negotiators also viewed the whole situation in perspective. Uh, Although there were no immediate gains on the nuclear issue, there was a commitment on the part of Iran that it would not develop nuclear weapons. And many of the elements of the nuclear deal had already been discussed and evolved in previous negotiations before the war started. And there are reports that the deal that was offered through the Omani negotiations just prior to the attack was something that could have served as a basis for an agreement, and that Iran had demonstrated quite a lot of flexibility. So I think the MoU tried to capture that in the paragraphs relating to the nuclear issue, and there was a sort of sense of expectation on the part of the Americans that the previous deals which had been offered by Iran would be on the table in the subsequent negotiations on the nuclear issue. Likewise, I think on the other aspects on Hormuz, the compromise obviously was a reflection of the reality, which is that Iran had the ability to stop the traffic in the Hormuz, and therefore the point 5 said make arrangements for the safe passage. I think, but remember, this was only for the 60 days. The post 60-day arrangement for Hormuz was supposed to be negotiated between Iran and Oman in consultation with other countries of the Gulf, the Arab countries of the Gulf, so that there would have had to be a consensus among all of them with regard to what would be the administration of the Gulf in the future. And there it was also stated that this would be inconsistent with international law. And international law provides the rights of free navigation through the Strait of Hormuz. So it was, in my view, a very practical approach to addressing the issue. First, in the 60 days, where Iran would make the arrangements for safe passage, because Iran had mined the stuff, Iran had the capability to hit the tankers, and the responsibility was therefore given to it. But Iran, on the other side, expected coordination. And after the 60 days, there were to be negotiations. And those negotiations would have to be consistent with international law, which does not allow tolling in the Gulf. Perhaps there would have to be some sort of coordination. Perhaps there would be some sort of service fee for the coordination, for navigation guidance, for tugboats, for environmental damage. That is, that kind of arrangement is operative in the Malacca Strait. There is a fund which has been created in the Malacca Strait that is managed by Japan, which takes a nominal service fee from every ship that transits Malacca. So that kind of arrangement could have been evolved, but I think it was the lack of agreement on the interpretation of point 5, which led to, and I would say, objectively speaking, that the responsibility for breaching that lies on the United States for trying to get the southern route going unilaterally without the Iranians. And I think that was at least contrary to the spirit, if not the letter, of point 5 of the MoU. Well, there was a lot of criticism of Trump, as you mentioned, from the Republican Party, from the Israeli lobby, and some people in the establishment. But I think that Trump knows that there is no military solution. They can escalate the bombing, they can try to hit more targets, but the Iranians have taken the punishment and they have survived. And there is no objective reason to believe that a further escalation of the bombing will change the Iranian position, that they will not capitulate to the United States despite the enhanced bombing. And they also know, and everybody knows, that the United States does not have the option of a land invasion. If there is a ground invasion, there will be huge casualties. I think the American public, which is already 60-70% opposed to this war, will not tolerate the huge casualties taking place through a land invasion, which will be inevitable. No matter how many Iranians they kill, there will be hundreds, if not thousands, of American casualties. And I don't think, as President Trump himself stated at one point, so the American public does not have the stomach to accept such casualties. So land invasion is out. If land invasion is out, there is no way that the Iranians can be subjugated through a bombing campaign. So I think Trump administration realizes that there will have to be a political solution. They want to do this they want to show their domestic hardline lobby that they are strong, so conducting this escalated bombing campaign, but at some stage they will sit down and they will want to sit down and negotiate with the Iranians. And that's why, in order to prepare the public opinion for that, Trump keeps saying the Iranians want a deal. The Iranians are desperate for a deal. They want a deal. But I think the Americans are just as anxious, if not more, than Iran to come back to a deal, to have a ceasefire, and to find a negotiated solution to the conflict.